Its antennae twitched once, then stilled. The small body curled against the warmth of a leaf, and the bee was gone. 20 kilometers away, in a Slovenian meadow, Mr. Charles reached for Hive 7 and found emptiness.
They took her.
The colony, his family, vanished in the night. 2 hours before dawn, a masked operative had sealed the living hive into a climate-controlled crate and loaded it onto a silent drone. The crate hummed with life, a bioluminescent label reading agricultural samples, organic pollinators.
I need to report a missing colony. No, not stolen, taken. They knew what they were doing.
He dialed the old number from memory, the one listed in the International Apicultural Federation's century-old directory.
To genetic resale. 2 billion credits per breeding queen gentleman, and we've just acquired the finest stock in the galaxy.
They did not know they had just activated the oldest civilian intelligence network on Earth. In Ljubljana, a screen flickered with the report. Hive 7 stolen.
Notify all registered beekeepers. Suspected illegal extraction. Immediate verification required on all shipments.
The alert rippled outward, lighting nodes across a digital map of Earth, touching every continent in under 4 minutes. In Mumbai, a retired customs officer checked his phone, then called a friend at the port. In Kenya, a beekeeper set down her smoker and radioed her cousin at the Mombasa freight terminal. In a dusty Vienna archive, an old telegram machine printed the alert. As it had for a century, Anika pulled open the filing cabinet. Ledgers from 1873 cataloged every lost colony.
Not a hobbyist club. The oldest civilian intelligence network Earth has ever built.
On a faded flag in the corner, a bee inside a globe. The cartel raised their glasses, never suspecting that in 40 ports, the keepers were waking. The hum cut through the whine of loading forklifts. Linda stopped, turned. A crate marked organic pollinators vibrated with a sound no box should make.
No bees on the manifest, just agricultural samples, control. This is Linda. I have a crate that shouldn't be buzzing. Singapore port, Bay 44.
I am pulling the shipping records now. Read me the label. Every digit.
Agricultural samples, organic pollinators. Origin port, Nantes. Consigne, Creche Biotech, New Jakarta.
Anaka's screen lit with data. Nantes hadn't shipped agricultural goods in 6 weeks.
I am taking a photo and sending it now.
That's a stolen colony, Linda. Hold it, quietly. I am notifying customs and the coordinator.
Linda locked the crate in a climate-controlled bay, then waited, her hand resting on the warm wood. 9 hours after the theft, the hive was located. The cartel hadn't even finished naturally. Latchley M., a customs officer who kept bees in Johor Bahru, helped Linda move the crate into an agricultural inspection bay.
Open it. I need to know if they're alive.
The lid lifted. Inside, a cluster of bees clung to frames, their wings stirring in the dim light.
They're alive. They're all alive.
They sealed the box and loaded it into a climate-controlled truck that normally carried live vaccines. Destination, Slovenia. In a glass-walled office, Rallen Voss swirled his wine. His assistant tapped at the door. The man reported that shipment C7 had been selected for a random agricultural screening in Singapore.
Routine. It'll clear. Our buyer is patient.
The assistant nodded and withdrew. Voss returned to his toast, unconcerned. On the other side of the terminal, Linda watched the refrigerated truck pull away, the hum fading into the morning traffic. That refrigerated truck was the first link in a relay of beekeepers, freight handlers, and retired pilots who owed the network a quiet favor.
I'll take her to the airport myself. No one touches this crate until she's on that cargo plane.
20 hours later, the phone rang in Mr. Charles's kitchen. He had not slept.
Mr. Charles, your hive was found. It is on its way home.
Who found it? The police?
Friends, beekeepers. She will arrive before dawn.
Just before first light, a soft knock woke him. Not on the door, on the empty hive stand. He opened the front door to silence and a familiar crate on his doorstep. He broke the seal. One bee crawled out, warmed by his breath, and rested on his trembling palm.
You came back. You came home.
He wept there, kneeling on the grass, the first light of morning catching the gold on her wings. 3 days after the toast, Raylan Voss stared at a logistics screen that showed shipment C7 as lost in transit.
Lost. How do you lose a sealed crate with a military-grade tracker?
The assistant had no answer. No paper trail, no confiscation notice, not even a bribe request, just nothing.
One of the other families is making a move. Find out who. Now.
The next call was from Rotterdam. A shipment of contraband pollen held for a missing phytosanitary stamp. Then Busan. A live sample container failed temperature inspection. It had passed every time for 3 years.
This is not competition. This is something else.
He pulled up the global logistics map. Red dots flickered at a dozen ports, all cargo with Kresh Biotech labels.
Someone is inside our supply chain. Find the leak. I want their name.
But the network had no leak. It had a century of friends, and Nika called a retired Frenchman who kept bees in Provence.
The Kresh Cartel. I need you to watch the Marseille port. Every crate that smells of pollen.
In São Paulo, a beekeeper launched a drone over the port, searching for a truck that didn't belong. In Rotterdam, a bee inspector flagged a container. The screen in Ljubljana showed a single word: quarantine. The network was born in 1872, during a plague of foul brood that threatened to wipe out every hive in Europe. Beekeepers shared infection maps by telegraph and post. They never stopped. The ledger had no last page. Raylan Voss watched the red dots on his shipping map disappear, one by one without explanation.
Note a rival cartel. This is something else. Something unseen.
He didn't know it, but the noose around his organization was drawn by hands that had never held a weapon. They held frames, not guns, and they were everywhere. In a moonlit Argentine field, a masked operative crept toward the hives, carrying a transport box and a military jamming unit. Before he touched the first super, a floodlight snapped on, then another, and a barn speaker crackled. You picked the wrong backyard.
Local keeper just turned on his yard lights. They ran.
The footage streamed to Ljubljana. Anika watched the timestamp and noted it in the log. Another theft averted before it began, thanks to a beekeeper who made a habit of checking his yard at 3 in the morning.
This was a clean operation. How did they know?
His assistant suggested Interpol or the Americans.
Then why no arrests? Why no demands? No ransom note? No blackmail? This is invisible.
The uncertainty was worse than any raid, any rival, any authority. Internal memo. Immediate freeze on all bee acquisitions. Find the leak. The cartel began to devour itself, hunting for a traitor who did not exist. In Marseille, a shipment of alien weapons was held for a paperwork discrepancy. The crates had never been marked correctly. A container of narcotic spores was seized in Rotterdam for an indefinite biosafety inspection. His accountant's screen showed red, revenue down 70%. 4 major deals collapsed. The shipping map became a graveyard of red lines. Every route was disrupted. A hologram flickered. The alien buyer's message was short. Contract terminated. You are a liability.
Someone is dismantling us. I want their name.
He stared at the screen, but no name would come. The network had no face. At 40 ports, people in fluorescent vests blocked his crates without ever knowing whose empire they were toppling. The Kresh cartel stopped moving. Shipments, payments, communications, all silence. The network asked for nothing. It had simply decided that a bee was worth more than a cartel.
He's panicking. If we don't show him what he's fighting, he might hurt someone.
She compiled a dossier. Photos of beekeepers from 1902, 1956, 2025. Ledgers, maps. The symbol of a bee inside a globe. The final page carried a single sentence. You stole a bee. You stole from us through an encrypted channel. The dossier reached Raylan Voss. He opened it alone, his hand trembling. The oldest continuous civilian intelligence apparatus on Earth. Older than the CIA, older than MI6, older than Mossad.
Beekeepers, 600,000 of them.
He read the message aloud, his voice cracking.
We know every port, every shipment, every breath you take.
He stared at the symbol of the bee inside the globe, and for the first time in his career, Raylan Voss understood fear. The network did not threaten. It did not demand. It simply waited.
Use commercial flights, couriers only, cash, no manifests. They can't watch everyone.
In Ljubljana, a young beekeeper's daughter saw a nervous man board a train. The beekeeping catalog in his bag was a school project and a beacon. She texted her father. He called the number that every beekeeper knew. The network had the courier's face within 60 seconds.
I am patching through to Brussels. We'll freeze them out entirely.
A Brussels lawyer filed emergency motions citing plant protection treaties that predated interstellar trade law. Within the hour, every Kresh Biotech account across 3 continents was frozen. Raylan Voss sat alone in his office, the screens black. He threw his tablet into a drawer and began emptying his desk. Kresh Biotech filed for bankruptcy before the week was out. The network did not celebrate. The beekeeper's daughter received a thank you card from the Federation and a jar of honey from Mr. Charles's apiary. The cartel fell not to raids or soldiers, but to a child who knew what a beekeeping catalog looked like. News of Kresh Biotech's collapse rippled through the underworld faster than any police bulletin. The Acadian Syndicate dismissed the reports. They saw an open market and sent their own extraction team to a Florida apiary. The crate never left Miami. Held for a missing import license, the colony was returned to its keeper before the syndicate knew it was gone. The Vorland group targeted Rotterdam. Their bee carrier was intercepted under biosafety protocols, and their entire fleet grounded for inspection.
They never learn. Bees have millions of guardians, and we all talk to each other.
The global logistics map showed 2 more red dots flicker out, almost casually. Beekeepers from Sao Paulo to Seoul checked their hives and nodded. The network asked nothing extra. The underworld stopped laughing. The silence that followed Kresh was no longer a mystery. It was a warning. A third cartel, watching from the sidelines, did not plan a theft. They began to take notes. They had learned that the quietest people could be the deadliest. In a lamplit study, the third cartel's leader studied reports of Kresh Biotech's destruction. He saw the pattern, not force, but a network that dissolved empires without a sound. He told his son they would not fight. They would apologize. It was the only way. He sat alone and wrote a letter by hand, the pen heavy with decades of wrong choices, to Mr. Charles. From a man who understands now what greed could not teach him. He folded the paper, pressed wax, and enclosed a bank draft. In Ljubljana, Anika received a message from her watchman.
The third cartel is sending a letter, not a buyer. Maybe one has learned.
The envelope crossed borders, a quiet offering to a man they had never met. The network allowed it, waiting to see if words could undo a wound. In a corner of a Ljubljana cafe, the envoy placed a wax-sealed envelope on the table before Anika. She studied his face, the glance at the door, the tremble in his hand. Anika opened the letter and read the careful script. Her expression softened. The envoy spoke quietly. His master had not slept since learning what he faced.
We are not your people, but I will give him this.
She tucked the envelope into her coat, next to a small tin of propolis salve. The network would deliver it to Mr. Charles, not as a demand, but as a choice.
If he accepts, it means more than any victory. If not, nothing changes.
She left the cafe alone. The envelope's weight light against her rib. A bank draft for 200,000 euros rested inside, enough to protect a mountain of hives. Anika walked through the apiary gate and found Mr. Charles kneeling beside Hive 7, his palm resting on the wood where the returning bees had resettled.
Mr. Charles, this came from the man who started it all.
The one who took her.
Number. The one who understood.
He took the envelope, broke the seal, and pulled out the paper. The bee on his shoulder stirring as if it could read the ink. He read aloud, his voice as dry as old pollen. I can never give back what was taken, but I can give what I have. He paused, then continued. The bee cannot carry a grudge, neither can the man who tends her. He folded the paper with the same care he used for a damaged wing. He did not rage. He did not weep. He touched the bee's wing and nodded, as if answering a question only the two of them heard. Anika waited in the lengthening shadows, letting the silence hold what words could not. Mr. Charles removed the bank draft from the envelope, his eyes scanning the amount without greed.
This money, it can protect more hives than mine.
He pulled a worn pen from his coverall pocket, flipped the draft, and endorsed it to the International Apicultural Federation.
You are a good man, Mr. Charles.
I am a beekeeper, that is all.
He handed the endorsed draft to Anika without ceremony, then turned to the hive where the bee still rested.
She would have done the same for me.
Later, in Ljubljana, Anika opened a Federation folder and slid the draft inside. The bee and globe symbol above her desk. The network asked nothing, but now it had the means to guard 1,000 more valleys, and in a Slovenian meadow, the bees flew on, living the only way they knew, giving back. 12 weeks after her return, the bee moved across the frame with a slowness that time had written into her wings. Mr. Charles lifted the super with his old frame grip and watched her walk from cell to cell.
You worked hard enough. Rest now.
In the afternoon light, she performed one last waggle dance, her body pointing to the clover field beyond the fence. He placed a drop of sugar water near the entrance, a small offering she would never refuse. He touched her wing, and she didn't startle. The trust between them had never wavered. He never named her. Names were for people. She was simply one who returned.
I know your time is near, little one, but you came home. That is enough.
He sat beside the hive through the twilight, as if his presence could slow the turning of the world. In the early light, she lay folded on the landing board, wings precise and unmoving, as if she had chosen her place. He knelt, a single finger reaching out to confirm what his heart already knew, what his hands refused to believe. The weight of her tiny body was nothing. The loss of her, everything he had feared. He carried her across the dew-soaked grass to a small hollow he had smoothed with his own hands the night before. He placed her in the hollow and pressed a thumbprint of golden honey over the dark earth, a final anointing.
Thank you for coming home.
The tears came at last, falling without sound onto the sweet soil. He stood, the hum of the hive filling the air around him, bees streaming past as if giving him room. Life continued, unbroken, unbound, forever returning to the flowers in the field. He remained there a while longer, the sun rising behind the hills. The season turned. Mr. Charles lifted a frame heavy with new brood, the cells capped and golden.
Life doesn't stop. It returns, again and again.
All hives secure, no alerts. Another quiet day.
In Singapore, Linda checked a manifest, a small enamel bee pin on her vest. The letter from Masri rested in a carved box, beside dried lavender from the apiary. The Federation's flag flew at 37 embassies, each one a silent promise. The apiary hummed in the slant light, bees threading the air like stitches mending the world.
She came home. That is all that matters.
He walked among the hives, the smoker cool in his hand, the evening settling around him, and somewhere in the earth, a thumbprint of honey had already fed the first wildflower. A young bee pushed through the hive entrance into the morning light. He lit the smoker in the cold mist, and the first bees stirred. The apiary hummed, each hive a small city that asked only to live. Across the world, that same symbol hung above quiet offices and dusty customs halls, a promise no cartel would forget. A man in a faded suit held a single bee on his hand, and the universe learned that some things cannot be stolen. Bees danced at the entrances, their language older than words, telling of clover and water and home. Inside the hive, another larva sealed herself in wax, waiting to be reborn. He knelt where she was buried, the soil now soft with green. The thumbprint was gone, but he remembered. He would always remember. And in the golden hour, a beekeeper stood watch, a single bee alive on his hand. They steal bees. We bring them home. That is all we have ever done. That is all that ever needed doing. From the first smoke rising in 1872 to this morning's light, the network is not a weapon. It is a reminder. You do not take what others love and expect silence. 600,000 beekeepers, 40 ports, a single hive stolen and returned within days. The cartels never understood that they were not fighting an enemy. They were fighting a family that extends through every shipping lane, every border crossing, every backyard hive, and in the end, the only apology that mattered was written on honey-scented paper and buried in soil. The bees still fly. The keepers still watch, and somewhere, an old man touches a wing and knows peace. The golden hour stretches over the meadow, catching the last smoke from the smoker fade to black. The sun lifted above the hills, and the first warmth touched the landing boards. One by one, the bees emerged from the entrance, hovering a moment before vanishing into the field. The meadow hummed, not loud, but constant. The sound of 1,000 tiny engines working without pause. There was no grave visible now, only green shoots where honey had seeped into the earth. Bees danced in the air, their paths older than maps, older than borders, older than any cartel. In the distance, Mr. Charles walked between the hives, just a shape against the morning, a keeper among his family. A new bee pushed out of the entrance, antennae twitching at the brightness of the world. She lifted off, and the sky accepted her without hesitation, as it had for 100 million years. The hives stood silent and full, their entrances bright with returning workers. The credits rolled over the meadow, and the camera held on the hives until the last light dimmed.